Hi and welcome to Module 8 and our inquiry question 1, Analysis of Inorganic Substances. Today we're going to be looking at monitoring the environment. So, pollution is a real concern. Now, to be able to know how to manage and control the problems, we need to actually know what we're dealing with. And this means finding the source of the pollutant, and so I suppose first of all we need to look at, well, what is a pollutant? Now, the definition of a pollutant is a substance that, when introduced to the environment, has an undesired effect on the environment. Now, when we talk about our environment, first thoughts often come to our water and our water quality. We're also looking at our soil and soil quality, and also our air. So looking at water, which is one of our focus areas, water is a very important resource. Now, if we're talking about water quality, we're not just talking about our water quality that we're drinking, but even our marine environment. So our fresh water that we do drink, our marine, so obviously where our marine life live, but also our groundwater, which is quite important, particularly as we move further out west. Now, it's of high importance in Australia, and because of that, Australia have put down some fairly strict guidelines to ensure acceptable levels of chemical but also biological boundaries are adhered to make sure that both our plants and animals in the environment are protected. Now, testing by chemists will actually help maintain this standard, hopefully, and allow us to manage it and maintain it at a safe level. So some of the substances that we consider a pollutant are actually naturally occurring substances. So as the definition said before, a pollutant is a substance that, when introduced, may have a harmful effect. Well, this can be the same for natural substances if they exceed the acceptable levels. So salt, for example, is one of them, and salinity has been a really big area, particularly in areas where we've removed a lot of our trees that used to keep a lot of that water tableland down much lower. Now that it's getting higher and higher, it's bringing the salt with it. But there's also salt from other minerals. Human activity has been huge, and we can all think of examples of human activity that may have impacted on our environment, and also then the presence of heavy metal salts, so cadmium, chromium, and lead. So let's have a look at our first one here, and just our salts from minerals. So salts are naturally present in our water system, particularly our marine environment, our saltwater environment, but we have other areas that also will have high mineral content. So when we're talking about salts from minerals, we're not just talking about sodium chloride, but we can even have other salts, remembering of course that salt is an ionic compound between a metal and a non-metal, or a radical. So Broken Hill is a big mining town, and lead sulfide, zinc sulfide, and silver oxide are in high quantities there, or have at least been in the past, and that's what makes it a mining town. They're mining these for those resources that they can use for other products and of course make money. Orange is another town, gold and copper mines, again the high concentration of these metals there. So what tends to happen is much of our water runs through the soils and the rocks, and dissolving the solid mineral deposits. And so what happens then is these are then transported into lakes, rivers and creeks and other bodies of water. So much of inland Australia was once submerged under the ocean, so the presence of salt at Lake Eyre, but even west of the Blue Mountains, is not really a surprise at all. Now, one of our other problems that we've also been having is the problem with hard water, and you may or may not have heard of hard water before, but it tends to be caused by the presence of calcium and or magnesium in our water, and that again is due to our dissolved minerals. So the water running through the rocks. So say, for example, limestone running through the rocks, it's dissolving, getting into our waterways and into our lakes and streams. And then this becomes a real problem for our washing action of soaps and detergents. It's much harder to lather the soap and the detergent up, and we can often see that in the presence of that calcium buildup on our kettles and showers. And our other one was our human activity. Now you can see here our 4 little images, and really it shouldn't come as any surprise really that human activity such as mining, agriculture, sewage treatment and domestic drainage can also increase salt levels in our water. So our governments are monitoring and regulating the levels of these salts and other contaminants in our waterways. We've had several desalination plants now being constructed to make clean drinking water out of our water containing salt. Even our mining, most of or a lot of the water that's been used in the mining process, once the process has been completed, that water is often discharged back into local waterways, and despite their best efforts, they are obviously and often still containing various ions there. Now, with agriculture, the use of fertilizers such as ammonium nitrate, ammonium sulfate and superphosphate have been used to increase our crop yield, and that's obviously important to our farmers. But again, what tends to happen is our rains come along and wash not only those fertilizers but even our pesticides that may have been used on those crops, and it runs back into our waterways again. And this then can also increase the concentration of these ions in the waterways and having an effect on our plant and marine life there. Domestic drainage, until recently, our fertilizers had a lot of phosphates in them, and again these would get into our waterways and create algal blooms and a process, eutrophication, where no sunlight, because of the algal blooms on top, no sunlight being able to penetrate, so plants and animals underneath are unable to, in the case of plants, photosynthesize, and animals dying off also because of the reduced oxygen in the water as well. Now with sewage treatment, a lot of the harmful contaminants tend to be removed in the treatment process, but again, water discharged from those treatment plants may have some of the similar ions in it, similar to domestic drainage, and that's obviously causing a similar sort of problem to what we had earlier. Now, looking at heavy metals, some of these can have a real toxic effect on organisms, particularly mercury. So they can be released into the environment in a couple of different ways: directly through human activity, so industrial waste, mining, metal processing and so forth, and just the waste going straight back into the water, or indirectly from our combustion of fuels, which release ions into the atmosphere and again then get involved in the water cycle. So often we again will have leaching from landfill sites and agricultural runoff as well, where people may have dumped their waste, and again rain and so forth run off back into our waterways. Now, some of these nutrients that we might have, these micronutrients such as iron, cobalt and zinc, are essential micronutrients that we need but can become toxic in high concentrations. Mercury and lead are highly poisonous even in small concentrations and can cause some real health problems, and that was particularly evident again in our own area around the Bullaroo area, where again there was detected high levels of lead, and this had direct impact on and measured impacts on IQ of children that would have been playing outside in that dirt, and as kids do, eat dirt, and that we've also removed recently lead from paint again due to the real health concerns from that. So, and our last little one is our air and soil quality. Like I said before, water's been a real big issue, but air and soil quality is equally are important and monitored by chemists for health and safety. And we can see here in our table the components of our air, nitrogen obviously the highest, and regardless of where we move to, it doesn't change too much. But looking here at some of our pollutants, we have, go away, carbon monoxide, again from our incomplete combustion, sulfur dioxide, and that can again come from our combustion of fuels, hydrocarbons, so burning from cars, burning from factories, and just general particulates, dust storms, earth moving, open cut mining, transferring coal in trains, it blows off in the wind, incomplete combustion of fuel, and so on, can have some real impacts on our air quality as well. And as we've talked about before, the air quality in China has become a real concern with their recent rise of the industrial age for them there too, and is having a health impact there as well. So of course our EPA is monitoring that as well. You'll complete that question that I've given you on discussing the importance of monitoring the environment, and we'll discuss this a little bit further in class. See you then.